Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Ty with the Dale K. Graham Veterans Foundation. So, first off, I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. This is just a great opportunity to receive information about how to properly prepare yourself to, submit any type of information for a VA disability claim. Now, I'm going to be doing a live Q&A, so look forward to answering all your questions and getting the ball rolling from there. Please pull out a pen, paper, or anything like that so you can take some notes so we can definitely give you all the information that you possibly need to make basically a very solid case for yourself. Because right now we're in a space where not too many people are sure how the process works. Again, my name is Ty, and I'm familiar with the process because I've been through the process. I served 4 years in the Marine Corps. I served 5 years federal with the Navy, and over the course of these past 6 years, I've been helping veterans with their disability claims. I've been helping veterans and military service members from an educational standpoint, and I look forward to helping you guys. So I am ready for the first question. I am already 100% permanent total. However, the VA has not made a disability rating for my sleep apnea. Do I get a SMC if I get a rating for my sleep apnea? I'm gonna answer the first part of that question. I wouldn't personally do anything, and here's why. If you're 100% permanent total, the VA usually frowns upon anybody filing a claim after that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't continue to get documentation, but if you're 100% total, permanent total, the VA is wondering, why are you still seeking compensation? Unless, like you said, you're looking for the special monthly compensation. Sleep apnea is not really one of those conditions that qualifies for that, because sleep apnea is usually tied to something. Now, I wouldn't, again, personally pursue anything after that unless you're trying to get it put on your death certificate. So conditions such as like your respiratory obstruction, like if that is your purpose for adding sleep apnea to your disability claim or as a service-connected disability, then yes, I would add it. But for special monthly compensation, it's very, very, I would say it would be very hard to get that one and try to get some special monthly compensation for it. But that's totally up to you. Why do companies force you into getting DBQs all the time? I can only speak from the my organization's standpoint, the Dale K. Graham Veterans Foundation, and we don't force you. It's highly recommended, and for one reason only, and that's to establish the nexus, right? The nexus is a current diagnosis, injury. The nexus is, which is a medical professional opinion, and then if the chronicity of it. It can't be an acute condition; it has to be chronic. And so the DBQs help substantially with proving the validity of your condition. And so at least that's what we do. All right. At the foundation, we submit evidence-based claims. And so I'll give you an example. If you have a back injury and let's say you have a lumbar strain and you're rated at 10%, unless you can prove that condition has gotten worse by going to the VA or whatever primary care doctor or insurer that you have, if you've already been building up evidence, then you can use that. But if you haven't, which most of us, we tend to not follow up on these conditions that we have, a DBQ would more likely help you, but you would need that diagnosis already. And since you would already have that lumbar diagnosis for your back, these providers in place that know how to properly fill out the DBQs can further give you diagnosis in case to prove that your condition got worse, if that makes sense. So you shouldn't be forced to get a DBQ, but if it's recommended, see if it best fits your situation financially, number one, and then if it will actually help your claim and not hurt it. Jose Estrada. Okay, I just got my first prescription for my hypertension. Should I associate my headaches to it? I already complained about my headaches, but hypertension was caught afterwards. Now, if there is a link, meaning that your the way your doctor or your physician worded it to link your hypertension to your headaches, then yes. Otherwise, you would still need a nexus to prove that one was caused by the other. Let me make sure I read that correctly. Yeah. So if it has not been stated that your hypertension was caused by headaches or headaches was caused by hypertension, you would, regardless, still need a nexus to prove that it's service connected or it's a secondary to that condition. To mention also, I got prescribed Tylenol and ibuprofen for the headaches. And that's good. I mean, over-the-counter medication, even if you prescribed it, treatment in general is probably the best way to establish evidence. Okay, there's no reason that the VA will look at you and say, okay, he has a head injury or he has migraines, but I don't see any treatment in place for him. And so, if you have treatment plan in place, whether it's Tylenol, ibuprofen, they issue ice pack, any form of treatment shows that you have a condition and you're seeking help. Benjamin Parch, how you doing? How do you get sleep apnea connected? So sleep apnea is an obstruction, right? It's usually up here in this area, right? And so sleep apnea is usually tied to something, okay? A lot of people try to just right off the bat claim sleep apnea. And if there's no obstruction, blockage in the airways, you're not going to get service connected. And I know a lot of people have heard that you could tie sleep apnea to PTSD. And the way to do that, if you are somebody who's suffering from anxiety, depression, PTSD, major depressive disorder, the way that you can service connect it as a secondary condition is, number one, you need a sleep study to figure out if you do have sleep apnea, and then you need to see the severity of it. And then number two, if you're trying to tie it to any mental condition, you need to show that whatever prescription they prescribed you, one of those symptoms is weight gain. It causes weight gain, which can cause obstruction. That would be your way to service connect sleep apnea as a secondary, because like I said, sleep apnea is usually tied to something. There's usually some type of obstruction, unless you have obstruction naturally, but it's usually tied to a condition. And that is the main way, because the biggest thing I see is people try to service connect it with their PTSD, but they're not doing it the right way. The way to do that is to ensure you know what prescriptions you're taking, and one of those prescriptions has to cause weight gain, and there has to be, obviously, there has to be showing of weight gain. I have an appeal to a judge on a decline of anxiety and depression, had a good CMP, and a great nexus, still denied. That's why my VSO said to appeal. How long will this take? And I'm not the subject matter expert on appeals, but I can tell you that there's no definitive time frame on how long appeal takes. It can take as early as 45 days, and it can take as long as a year. It all depends on your case. It helps if you have representation. So if you have representation, whether it be by the Dale K. Graham Veterans Foundation, American Legion, whoever you decide to represent you, that helps speed it along, rather than you trying to go forth and have them just review your records. But the reasoning behind that is there's just so many veterans to service. Okay, so that's why foundations such as the Dale K. Graham Foundation, American Legion, and all these other organizations, that's why they're in place, to, I guess, be a buffer for the time frame that you have in place. But there is no definitive date or time period for them to decide on your appeal. It's just a waiting game. I have an appeal. Simplify. Rah. Can a nexus be established as part of a DBQ? Can a nexus be established as part of a DBQ? Let me see if I understand that. I would say yes, if I'm understanding correctly. The DBQ is your way to form the nexus. Okay, so disability benefits questionnaire, that's the name of the actual form. And if you go on va.gov, there's a list of all the VA forms associated with all the conditions that you could possibly claim. When you get a DBQ, you're basically asking a medical professional to give you the severity of your condition. That's the whole purpose of the DBQ, is the severity portion of it, and to establish that nexus, for them to say that, hey, in my professional opinion, this condition more than likely was caused by this veteran's or the service member's military service. The DBQ is the nexus if it's done and filled out properly. I hope I answered your question correctly or understood your question. Sorry, I won't be able to make the live, brother. It's coming in a few minutes. Much love. Stay motivated. And that's hello, sir. I submitted 2 claims with DBQs and nexus as of now. Evidence gathering, review, and decision. Hey, well, they do that evidence gathering, review, and decision. They do that to kind of throw you off, because most of us are going to be like, okay, it's sitting in limbo, it's floating out there, but it's specifically designed that way so we don't hound the VA on, hey, what's the status of this? What's the status of this? Hey, I'm calling in. That's the reason for the lack of time frame. That's why they say right now we have between 45 and 90 days. I usually stretch it to 45 and 100 days for a claim to be complete and finished. It's good that you submitted DBQs and you have a nexus. And the way I do it, and I'm not sure if this is your first claim or if this is your second or third, fourth, fifth, but the decision letter, the denial letter, is multiple names. You can rate a decision. That is like your bread and butter to figuring out why the VA denied you on certain conditions. If you figure out why, you can provide them that information to cancel out that why. And then there shouldn't be no reason why you don't get service connection granted. CJ Jones, is hypoapnea recognized by the VA? That's actually a good question. That's actually my first time hearing about that, at least that verbiage, hypoapnea. That'd be something that I would have to further look into, but I just for my knowledge as well. Now, is that a form of sleep apnea? I'm not too certain, but I'll be interested to figure out what exactly that is and if it is established as a service connection with the VA. Chris, I need to file for an increase. Do I just submit it as a supplemental, attach the medical evidence, and cite the CFR? When you're filing for an increase, so let me back up. A 21-526EZ, that is the VA form specifically for new conditions or increases. That is not a supplemental claim. The 0995 is for supplemental claims, and that is for a condition you're trying to appeal or something that was previously denied. If you're filing for an increase, you don't need to submit a supplemental claim. You do need to attach medical evidence, and citing the CFR is cool, but you need something a little bit concrete than citing the CFR, because I could just wake up one day and like, you know what, I want to file for an increase, go find the condition I want to increase and then throw it in there. They're going to look at me and say denied, just because anybody can do it. It's public information. So I would definitely, if you're filing for an increase on anything, ensure you're going to the VA. The VA doesn't have to be your primary care provider, but you need to maintain a relationship with them. And I always say, for claim purposes, the VA is your best friend. All right. It's a free service if you got disability compensation coming in. And so why not go ahead and get all the treatment and medication that you need to come through the VA? If that makes sense. Apnea, hypo index is part of the. Okay, so I would say no to the previous question, because this sounds like it's a form of way to diagnose sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is the one that you can service connect. To answer that previous question, that has taken more than 11 business days so far, and the status is still received, not processing. This is for my military records. Should I just wait 6 months? So I'm not sure what. Oh, my veteran records. Okay. All right. So there's a couple ways that you can request your records. The fastest way that I've seen so far is going through archives.gov, and that also depends on how long you've been out. So whenever you separate it, as far as I know right now, if you separate it before 2008, yes, you have to go the archive.gov route. But if you separate it from 08 up until now, you should still be able to log into TRICARE portal and pull whatever military medical records that you had while you were in service. Now, the turnaround time, it varies because it's usually an identity thing that slows up the process because maybe you haven't been in the military that long, or or in a couple years. So I can't again give you a definitive date, but archive.gov has been an avenue. It's taken somebody 9 months. It's taken somebody a week to get their records, and so it's totally up to you if you want to wait that 6 months or reach out and contact them to see, okay, what's the status on it. If we need more information, LSI has not contacted me. So do you think I won't have a CMP due to Nexus and DBQs? The VA is a very I want to say complex entity, but they definitely are going to do a CMP. I would hope that they don't, and they just roll with the Nexus and DBQs. I've seen some examiners, CMP examiners, just concur with what the DBQ exam says, and I would hope that's your case if you got a solid DBQ. But more likely, they will be reaching out to schedule you a CMP, and if they don't, depending on how long you've been waiting, I would reach out to the VA and see if there's anything on the books for you, or they're planning, or any requests were submitted to get you scheduled for a CMP exam. I wouldn't just go ahead and count them out, because what you don't want to do is miss your appointment, or drop the ball in communication, because that'll turn out to be an automatic denial, and I wouldn't want that for you. Yeah, happy to be here too. Glad you tuned in. Is it possible to get chronic fatigue syndrome connected if you have sleep apnea? That is excuse me. That's a good question. Chronic fatigue syndrome connected if you have sleep apnea. It's possible to get it if you don't have sleep apnea as well. So the main thing you need to do, depending on what area you're in too, if you were in like Gulf War area, then it would be easier for you to get that service connection, because I believe it's just presumptive, and don't quote me on that if it's, I have to double check that. But if I'm not mistaken, yes, you can, with and without sleep apnea. Would you mind checking in on that for me, Clay? Looking at it, filing for fibromyalgia, go for it. Working with provider on diagnosis now. Will it hurt my rating for? Will it hurt my rating? Okay. No, I mean, I think the question got cut off, but no, I don't. It shouldn't hurt your rating. If you're filing for fibromyalgia, which is a serious condition from the Gulf War, you do need that diagnosis. I'm not sure what your rating is right now and what specifically you're referencing when you said heard it. But fibromyalgia is a presumptive condition for the Gulf War as long as you have that diagnosis and you can prove that you were in those locations. Is there a network of providers who specifically work on veterans who require DBQ nexus? I can't speak for anyone else. I do know that the foundation, we have a list of providers. We have no affiliation with them, but we did identify that they speak really good VA language, which is what most veterans need. Now, we would love to expand to different states, maybe even outside the country, but as of right now, we have Oklahoma-based providers, some in Texas, and we're looking to expand. But again, there's no specific affiliation with the providers that we have. We just identified that they speak VA language and they're willing to do DBQs and write those nexus statements for our veterans. I already have for cervical, lumbar, migraines. No, it shouldn't hurt your claim. It shouldn't hurt your rating at all. If anything, it'll improve your rating. As long as you can prove that you you have the diagnosis and that you were in those locations during the Gulf War that fall on that list, you should be good. Have you ever helped with BDD claims? If yes, what is included in service treatment records for BDD claims versus FDC? I actually just did a BDD claim. So what a BDD claim is you have to file an intent and actually submit a claim before the 90th day. All right, so you have between 90 and 180 days to file a BDD claim. And all that is giving you 45 days from within that 90 days that you have remaining to, do your VA appointments and stuff. So the VA's basically wanting to grant you service connection within 30 days after you EAS. That's the purpose of the BDD claim, is just to get you service connection within 30 days after EASing or ETSing. Now, what is needed is basically what's needed for a fully developed claim. You need your medical records. I know now they still have the TRICARE, and then they also have Genesis. Is I guess the new thing that you guys have. You need to ensure that you have all the pertinent information for the condition that you're claiming. And even if there's something in there that you don't, or let me back up. Even if there's something that you never reported, that's your opportunity to go ahead and start gathering evidence for that. I will say that for your first claim, whether you're doing a BDD or your FDC, that is your opportunity to list things that you may have not claimed before, or let me back up, that you may have not reported to medical or VAS. And I say that because you want that information to be on your first claim, regardless if it's denied. And I'll give you an example. Back in 2016, I filed for anxiety. I had never went to medical, never got a prescription, never went to counseling, but I still put it on my first claim. They denied it. Once I got out, I got rated for all my other conditions. And then I went to the VA and I said, you know what? I need a psychiatrist or therapist. They assigned me one, gave me a treatment plan. I then later filed for that same condition because I had evidence now, and they service connected it at 30%. So it's about building that trail. Okay, so if you start from the beginning and you list everything, regardless if it gets service connected or not, it's in your file now. You made mention of it, and so you can come back on the back end and get the evidence and get that nexus to prove that, hey, this did happen in service, or hey, this is chronic and continuous. Does that make sense? I would like to volunteer with DKGVF. Who do I contact? So you can actually go to our main website, Dale K. Graham Veterans Foundation website. Is right there on the screen, actually. And then you can sign up to be a volunteer. and our volunteer coordinator will reach out to you to walk you through those phases, and you have to attend some training classes, but that would be the proper way to go ahead and get the ball rolling to be a volunteer. And we'd love to have you here. We need all the volunteers we can get. If I was diagnosed with flat feet in service, can I still make a claim even though Doc made a comment that it wasn't caused or aggravated by service? If you were diagnosed with flat feet in service, that doesn't make any sense. That the doc made a comment that it wasn't caused or aggravated by service. The doc, yes, you should still be able to file a claim for that. If you got diagnosed in service, you should be able to file a claim for that condition. Regardless of what the doc said, you do need to establish the nexus, though. Again, like you would need to basically prove to the VA that, hey, due to these boots and this rough terrain and hiking and carrying this load, as a result in running, these are all resulting to me having flat feet. That would have to be your argument with the VA. It will be more so caused than aggravated. If it was aggravated, they would have diagnosed you prior to service, prior to you even going to boot camp. You would have got diagnosed with that, and then it would have got aggravated by service. So it would be a cause. It would be more direct than aggravated because you said you got diagnosed with flat feet in service. So you can claim it. Again, you just still have to build that evidence and prove that, okay, this happened in service, and I'm still dealing with it right now. What's the difference between a DBQ and diagnosis? Okay, so again, DBQ is Disability Benefits Questionnaire. That VA form is specifically for providing nexus and proving the severity of your condition. The diagnosis is simple, like plantar fasciitis. That's a foot diagnosis, okay? And so what the DBQ does is prove the severity of my condition. Is it mild, moderate, or severe? Or it's the same thing with sleep apnea. Is it mild, moderate, or severe? A DBQ is just basically the VA's professional format filing form for you to make your case. The diagnosis is what the medical provider gives you, or the professional, whether it be whatever it is you're getting diagnosed with. They're the ones that's going to provide you the diagnosis. But again, when you do a DBQ, most providers want you to have a diagnosis already of something before they can, further evaluate you. At least the ones in our network. So if I have, again, a lumbar strain, in order for them to diagnose me with IBDS and all these other back conditions, they want me to at least have something identified already before I come to them. If that makes total sense right there. Have had an apnea claim sitting in supplemental appeal at the regional office for over 135 days, sent there after a higher level review, DTA error. Got my CMP file and it's totally wrong. Why is it taking so long? Usually, and I can only speak from experience, usually if it takes longer than the norm, which again, there's not really a definitive time frame, it's because it got hung up somewhere and something was done incorrectly. So the DTA, that duty to assist error, that means the VA identified something, right? So right now, if you got your CMP file and it's totally wrong, did you make mention of that? Did you reach out to the VA to let them know that, hey, this does not mirror exactly what happened in the exam? Those are questions that I would ask personally, or even like I would come to an organization like ours or maybe another one to figure out what's going on in the back. Because right now you can only see what's happening in the front, and VA.gov, it's a good site, but it's very vague when it comes to, trying to figure out where exactly your claim is sitting. And you do receive the VA correspondence, but that's not really telling you much. So it is best to be signed up or have an organization represent you, because they may have access to things that you can't get access to. And that's the only way I would be able to assist you personally, is if I was able to go into our back system to figure out exactly where your claim is sitting. Trying to find the path to get diabetes service connected, no record in service. So diabetes is a hard one to get service connected, specifically because they like to contribute it to more of a personal choice thing, is the reason why you became a diabetic, unless you were in those areas where diabetes is presumptive. Vietnam is obviously the presumptive area for diabetes. I'm not sure if you were that area or not, but right now diabetes is very hard to get that service connected. It's not impossible, but it's very hard. And you will need to, number one, get the nexus established. You need to have your doctor make mention that because of this, like, actually, I'll give an example. I have a gentleman right now. He is not overweight or anything like that, but he has diabetes. And right now, that's what we're working on right now. We're trying to figure out how to angle his claim, his condition, to service connects, because he didn't get diagnosed with it, but his levels were abnormally high. So he was like pre-diabetic, but he didn't actually get the diagnosis until he got out of service. But the VA is still fighting to say that, hey, his numbers show this, but he didn't get the diagnosis. So right now, that's what we're working on. We're trying to basically twist the VA's arm to say, okay, I understand he didn't have diagnosis, but you see his levels have escalated as time went by. This isn't his first rodeo as far as getting his blood work tested. And so, like I said, it's not impossible, but it does take a little bit more legwork than the average condition, especially if you wasn't in Vietnam era. How do I know if I have a formal diagnosis? I see migraines in my records. Is that considered a diagnosis? So usually how I look at it, if it is in your record, something as like simple as migraines, headaches, those are excuse me.
What are you doing?
Those are it doesn't have to specifically say be a diagnosis or say the word diagnosis and then have it listed under, but because it's in your record, you can use that as a condition that you're filing for. And that's simply what I do. And so what the VA wants to prove is that that condition that's in your record is acute.
What are you doing?
Go over there. I need you to step out. So, if that makes sense, migraines or anything like that that's in your record is acute if you don't continue to mention it, in the VA's eyes at least. What are approaches Marines previously on long sea service used for tinnitus beneath flight decks? Make sure I'm reading that right.
What are you doing?
Previously on long sea service used for tinnitus. All right, so tinnitus is, I would say, one of the easier conditions to get service connected because you can't test for it. Okay, they simply can't test for the ringing in your ears, and how they usually rate you is based off of your job and your environment. So if you're on a mule, you're around the boiler, you're around the flight deck, and this eliminate the fact that there's a lawsuit for the 3M Pro. Like this remove that from play. being around helos, being around the Black Hawks, working as a mechanic and engineer, like all those MOSs, those jobs require you to use, probably heavy equipment, loud machinery. You hear the jet engines, like those all contribute to the fact that you may have tinnitus, and not to mention, weapons fire. So it's and I said, I was a Marine, so I was around M16s, I was around the 240s. I got to ride in the helos, so all those are contributing factors. I worked in a warehouse, all contributing factors for tinnitus. And you don't need a DBQ per se for that, just because you could use the buddy statements, and again, they can go based off of what you did in the service. It's just about how you word it, because the verbiage matters. Kids, we all got them. Well, thank you for your patience. If you complain about feet pain when walking in service and post-service flat foot diagnosed, would they qualify for a rating, or is just complaining of feet not enough in service evidence? So, complaining about your feet is definitely, I'll say, a crucial part of the gathering evidence, because you can have the complaints and you may not have like a specific diagnosis, but the fact that you mentioned that, hey, my feet hurt, is enough to get the ball rolling, or is enough for the VA to say, you know what, I see he annotated this and it's annotated in his record, but he still, or she has to still prove to me that it's acute or it's chronic. They're hoping that it's acute because they don't obviously want to give you money for your injuries, but because the VA literally wants you to be quadriplegic for you to get paid. You have to be basically incapacitated for them to recognize your conditions, and that's the unfortunate part. But if you continue to complain about your feet and you get a formal diagnosis, that will make your case much stronger. But complaining about your feet or any other condition you may have concerns about is definitely important. So it's good that you did that, and I believe you do qualify for rating. If you had an issue documented while on active duty but never got diagnosed, can it still get service connected down the road? Yes, if you take the proper steps to do so, yes. And I'll give you an example. Let me make sure I read this right. Okay, so when I give you an example, let's say let's use your back. Say you had a back problem due to being in the service, your job, physical training, all these different things, and you're taught not to report anything, so you don't go to medical, or you don't have enough time to get any documentation, so you get out and now you're looking to file a claim. What you can do, and like I said in the previous question, is make mention of it regardless if you have any evidence of it. Let them know that, hey, I know I never reported this, but I have a back problem, okay? And it's because of my military service. I wouldn't have had this if I would have went straight to college. And so now that you've mentioned it, regardless if it gets service connected or not, you should get service connected for something if you file your claim properly. And then once you get in with the VA, that's your opportunity to build that evidence, to build that nexus statement that you're gonna need down the road. Like I said, I've been helping people like from all eras, from Vietnam. People back in the day, they didn't have computers, laptops, technology, or anything of that nature, and so we're getting them guys service connected right now, and it's like 50 years later. So I do believe it's possible, even if you didn't make mention or get the diagnosis in service. It's just how you go about doing it. And you have to do it right the first time, or you're going to make the battle a lot harder in the long run. Hi, thank you for all you do. Have you seen fibromyalgia? PSD? Thank you. I have not seen fibromyalgia as a secondary to PTSD. I would be interested to see that if that is even a way to service connect that. But I would definitely get back and kind of figure out if that is even possible. I'm not a medical professional, so I wouldn't be able to tell you if that is a way to get a service connected, but I definitely could find out the answer for you. Well, all issues diagnosed with 1 year of retirement. Service connected. So I like to talk to retirees because the VA likes to give you guys the hardest time because you got the pension coming in. So if you get your diagnosis within that 1 year of retirement, yes. And what the VA likes to call it is they call it your golden year. Okay. So you have 1 year from retirement or the day you ETS, EAS to file a disability claim for it to be rated as service connected. Okay. So, and it doesn't matter if you're retiring or you're not retiring, you still have that 1 year window for things to make it service connection um, with the diagnosis. Now, I like to believe, and I don't want to steer anybody in the wrong direction because it's kind of like a hit or miss, but that 1 year rule is not written in stone. Okay, it's like an unwritten rule. Okay, the VA doesn't actually have um, a VA regulation or law in place that says, hey, you have 1 year to file or we're going to deny you any service connection. There's nothing in place that says that. That's just what has been streamlined down the road, and everybody, that's what we all believe. Now, again, if you have a solid case, you have solid evidence, you have solid nexus, that year shouldn't matter. But we like to encourage people to stay within that year so we don't get complacent and then before it's too late, we lose our medical records and we don't have nothing now. We start from scratch. I recently got an email to have a conference call with the VA for higher level review. Is this something new that they do? Yes. So again, it's better to have representation. We have our reps, our appeal team here at the foundation. So it's better to have an attorney go before you because they usually put together a package, and then they can argue whatever it is, whatever condition that you're going with. Now, in this case, you're going to be the one sitting with the judge and pretty much stating your case. That is, I think this is new in the process. Um, I wouldn't have any fears or concerns about it if you're properly prepared. I'm not sure what condition that you're going to be seeking a higher level review on, but if you're prepared, I believe it's something that you can do with no issue. And all it is you're going to be in video conference with the judge, and they're going to whether it's a duty to assist area or is it something that you're appealing, for yourself because you just don't agree with the VA's decision. Is there a breakdown of conditions that are considered static and non-static? I know for 100% total, all conditions have to be static, correct? I'm not gonna lie to you. I never really paid attention to the static and non-static concept of it. What I pay attention to is the chronicity portion of it, and if that's what you're referencing, the VA, for you to be permanent total, chronicity is what matters. Okay, so if your conditions are chronic and continuous, like I got evaluated, I have plantar fasciitis at 30%. Feet are jacked up, and the VA made an error on my claim, but I didn't go looking for it. And they came back and said, you know what? No, this condition is chronic and continuous. So your ratings are going to stay the same or it's going to increase. So the VA, that's their main focus is the chronicity of any condition that you have. They're looking for your conditions to get better or to be acute. And that is what you want there for yourself. You want your conditions. Obviously, you don't want to suffer. You don't want to be in pain all the time. But a thing to take into consideration is once you do improve, once that condition does get better, once you have that surgery, the VA is going to flag you. Okay. And that's why I always say maintain a relationship with the VA. Like even if you don't feel comfortable going into the VA because it's just a daunting process or waiting or whatever it is. I know that I've heard all the nightmare stories about the VA. Still maintain a relationship, still continue to build evidence, and always keep a treatment plan in place, because that's what matters. That's what they're going to see. So 30 years from now, if they decide to reevaluate everybody, you don't want to be the individual after 30 years of having 100% that has never sought treatment, because you're just going to be somebody that's collecting compensation in the VA's eyes. And I don't want you to be that person. Where does this DBQ form exist on the VA site, and how to coach docs on key required aspects for the next? Oh, that's a good question. So at our well, number one, you go to va.gov and you can probably type in the search bar DBQ and whatever form that you're looking for. But as far as ensuring that if you want your private provider, your own personal physician to fill out the DBQ form, I'm not sure if anybody else offers it, but our foundation, we have specific instructions that list what a physician, whether it's a RN or a doctor, we have instructions for them to follow, including the verbiage that needs to be on that form for them to properly fill it out on your behalf. Excuse me. Can VSOs charge money to help veterans on their claim? VSOs, no. Only ones that I know can charge is, I believe, attorneys, and that's like a service fee. But VSOs is, we're here to help you, okay? All this information is public, okay? With the foundation, the Dale K. Graham Veterans Foundation, the only money that's coming out of your pocket is if we send you to do a DBQ. And again, that relationship with the provider, that's where there's no affiliation in between there. Whatever they charge is what they get, okay? So that's the only money, if you come through us, that's the only money that's going to come out of your pocket, is if we recommend you go do this. And I don't want to say recommend. They like to say who I would go see is this individual, because I've heard that they've done this really well, or they do really good exams on feet or back or mental conditions. So no, they shouldn't. The VA didn't list all my evidence on the decision letter. I feel the rating is low. Should I do a higher level review? That, yes, that sounds like a duty to assist error. If there's any point, and this goes for everybody, if there's any point in which you believe that, hey, something wasn't considered, if you got a DBQ or if you submit evidence and it's not listed as evidence, that is a duty to assist error. And obviously, the only way you can file a higher level review is within 1 year from that decision. Okay, so if you're within that 1 year and you identify that you submitted this evidence, but it's not listed as evidence, yes, I would file a higher level review. Is bruxism rateable? Could you check into that for me, Clay? I'm not even familiar with that word, bruxism, if I pronounced that correctly. Where does this medical DBQ form exist? How to coach? Yeah. So again, go to va.gov. I believe Clay dropped a link on there not too long ago. Go to va.gov. Type in DBQ in the search bar, and all the DBQ forms should pop up associated with each individual condition. And then all the providers in our network, they already have the forms on hand. But if you want your primary care doctor to do it, or somebody else that's qualified, yeah, you need to tell them where the forms are, or they need to exactly what they look like. Looking for file for fibromyalgia. Go working on diagnosis with doctor now. He'll be putting claim. Okay, so That's a very good question. So you don't want a pyramid, and I know that's a big fear with a lot of people. Is like if there is what was the word? If there are conflicting symptoms, meaning you can have symptoms for this and for this, and they're the same, then pyramiding could come into effect. And but you have cervical IBDS, lumbar DDD, and migraines. Fibromyalgia is much serious, and I don't foresee that hurting your claim. I would definitely go ahead and pursue getting the diagnosis, and then compare the symptoms and ensure that nothing crosses over. Because if they cross over, then that's where the VA will start to look at, okay, he does have this or she does have this, but she also has this. So I'm gonna go ahead and just slide this under here, take that percentage and give him this whole big percentage. Um, and that could either increase your percentage or that could drop your percentage. But I would go ahead and pursue getting the diagnosis, and then I would compare the symptoms, ensure that nothing's crossing over or causing um, uh, any conflicting symptoms as far as the condition you're trying to claim. But I don't see any concerns there. It's generally symptoms of an underlying condition. Best example is under mental health. You'll find it in DBQ. In that case, was the symptom of mental health. Okay. So, um, if it's relating to mental health, I would say yes. Um, Now, under that terminology, I wouldn't say they would say you have bruxism, but if they identify that it's tied to anxiety, depression, PTSD, MBD, then yes, or insomnia is a form of mental, then yes, I believe that can be used in a way to rate you for mental condition. Would DBQ, Nexus, etc., be necessary if you're coming off of active duty? Um, No, I wouldn't say necessarily no. Most people, guys and gals that I use, that I submit claims for, that are coming off active duty, I don't get any send them to providers. I don't get any nexus as far as filling out a DBQ form. I just use their medical records, their list of conditions, or whatever we're claiming, and we use that and we submit it forward. Now, if you are literally one of those individuals who've never stepped foot in BAS or medical, then maybe. But it's very rare that you made it through your whole 4 years or 20 years and did step for the medical and have something in there. But most cases, you don't need a DBQ or a Nexus if you're coming off active duty. If you have proper documentation, your final physical is your most important exam before you separate from active duty. Not the VA, the military by law is not supposed to release you off active duty if you're not full duty. Okay, so we tend to be like, I'm okay, I just want to get out because we don't want to prolong the process. But that is your opportunity to say everything, because basically when that physician, that doctor signs off on everything you listed, they're basically saying that, hey, this motivator is getting out, but they have all these issues, and I'm signing off on it. And you could file a claim with just that, just your final physical, if you do it properly. How soon can I do an increase or disability if my symptoms are worse within the first year? You can, if you, let's look, and I'll give you an example. I did this one about 2 months ago. Let's say I filed for my migraines, right? I got diagnosed with migraines. I have 0%. Next month, well, let's say that same month, I went and got a treatment plan in place, prescription, and the next month I filed a claim. You can file a claim within a month of receiving a decision for something, just to let them know, because it could be that they rated you improperly from the get go, and so there's not a specific time frame of how long you have to wait to file a disability claim. It would be wise to wait to the other claim is closed, so you don't erase your intent to file date, or just mess up the process in general. But yes, you can file within your first year if your symptoms are worse. Is there any issue with filing a claim for both sleep apnea and insomnia? Wasn't sure if they conflicted because they're both sleep related claims. So no, there isn't. I will tell you that insomnia, they don't look at insomnia as a sleeping condition. They look at it as a mental condition. So look at that as far as like if you're already ready for mental and you're trying to claim insomnia, that's going to be more conflicting than sleep apnea. Sleep apnea again is obstruction. So there's something blocking your airway that's causing a disruption with your sleep. Insomnia is more mental, sleep disturbances type. But again, that is a mental condition. And so if you already got PTSD or adjustment disorder or major depressive disorder, keep that in mind before you claim insomnia. Do you recommend personal statements when you're submitting BD claims? VSO is telling me they not needed because I'm active duty and pending retirement. Almost saying just worry about the CMP. I'll say more evidence is better than less. So if you can get some personal statements, whether if it's your wife, husband, it doesn't matter, friends, peers, yes, personal statements help. Okay. You don't want to just depend on the CMP. The CMP are contracted out by the VA. The VA pays them to do the evaluations, okay? And they have quotas, okay? So I wouldn't personally depend on the CMP exam to come in favor of me. So yes, I would submit more evidence even if it's not needed. I find that the VA is hard to deal with when you're seeking an actual diagnosis. Yes. But it also depends because I know there's some very veteran friendly doctors and physicians out there that are pro military, so they do the legwork that they're supposed to do to ensure that you get the proper diagnosis. I will say that what the physicians don't do, primary cares, at least I haven't seen them do it yet, is they don't speak VA language, even though they work at the VA. Because VA Health Department does not communicate with the VBA. And so it's different if we were to say, go get this DBQ, they know exactly what the verbiage needs to say. They'll stamp their name on it and say, in my professional opinion. Whereas if you look at your medical records, your progress notes from the VA, they say the veteran reports this or so-and-so reports this. They're not saying that, hey, this is what it is. They're saying, hey, this is what they came in and said. And you're a credible witness to the VA, but that's not credible evidence if they're not stamping their name on it. If I am waiting for an appointment, should I wait to file again with the VA? Are you waiting on a CMP exam appointment? Because if you're waiting on the CMP exam appointment, yes, I'll wait to that. You follow through with that appointment, wait till that claim is closed, and then file a new claim if you don't agree with the decision. Yeah, much love. If having prior active duty deployments from the Marines and Army, 90s to 2012, then since currently still serving in Air Guard, do you have to wait until being 100% out before filing any claims? No. If you're on reserve time, like you're not on active orders, you can file a claim now. You can file a claim today. The VA is not going to look at your reserve time unless you had active orders within that time period, but you could file for the active duty time that you had while you were in the Army and the Marines. I know some people right now who are 100% serving in the Guard. So, no, don't wait it out. They ride motivator. They will say though, they will make it hard for you to get that service connection. It's not impossible, but your biggest argument is going to say, okay, well, you're a civilian most of the time throughout the month, and then you go your weekends and you go your 2 weeks out the year. They're going to say what happened in between there. But again, you're trying to focus on the fact that you did time in the Marines and the Army Guard from the 90s to 2012. If you can show evidence that you have been to medical or anything, any proof of what you did in the service during that time period, then no, it shouldn't be an issue. But again, don't wait to file until you're completely out, because that's just going to make it that much harder, because you've already been off active duty. If you said 2012, you've been off for 11 years already, and you don't want to keep waiting. Can you do my? Of course. Come sign up with the foundation. There it is right there, DKGVF I will walk you through the process. I like to educate. That's the most important part to me, because at the end of the day, I want you to have the tools and knowledge to be able to write your own claim. I love doing it, but wouldn't it be cool if you can do it too? After CMP exam. Oh, where'd the question go? After CMP exams, how long does it take typically for a decision? Also, thanks for volunteering your time. It's all clear. Go Big Blue. Go Big Blue, huh? All right. So typically, and I did my disability claim back in 2016, 17, and the time frame that they used to tell us, I'm not sure if it's the same, is 4 to 6 weeks. And that's accounting for the fact that they complete your evaluation, they send it to the VA, and the VA does, whatever it's supposed to do. So as much as I would love to give you a definitive date and time frame of how long it takes, I just know that claims are getting complete between 45 and 90 days typically, but I like to extend that out to 120 just to give a little bit of leeway. What are the costs associated with the providers your foundation affiliates with? So that is a question you would have to, number one, you would need to come to the organization. That way we can provide you with that list. And then you can call them up, inquire about pricing. I do know that they give discounts if you have multiple conditions you're going for. But there's no affiliation. We don't get any pieces of the pie that you'll be, paying out of pocket. That goes specifically to those providers, but I don't know those fees and those prices, so I don't want to give you a number and then you stick with it and you like, hey, yo, Ty, you said it was this much, so I can't step my name on that. When do I use my private doctor and when do I use the VA for getting evidence? For VA purposes, claim, like for filing disability claim, the VA would much rather receive evidence from their doctors or from their within their organization. Okay, like I said, that's not to say that you can't have your own primary care provider outside of that, because I do know the VA. Not too many people are in favor of the VA, but I will say the VA has all the equipment. But as far as build your evidence with VA and with your primary care doctor outside the VA. I'm just letting you know that for claim purposes, the VA would much rather have your records in their system than for you to upload them or for them to go find them. But always establish a relationship, always maintain a relationship, and always build evidence. Keep a treatment plan. Do decisions take longer when connecting the conditions? Do decisions take longer when connecting the conditions will get you 200? It all depends. I just helped someone. There was a mix-up with his name and another gentleman's name. That's the only reason it took so long. But he got 100% off the back, and that's from filing properly, for taking the right steps, for saying the right things. Um, I the rumor is that yes, if you're 90%, 80%, and you're like trying to get over that final hump to get to 100%, the rumor is that yes, it is harder. The VA does, press down a lot harder to get you before they give you that service connection. But I have seen that if, like I said, if you have the proper if you have all the evidence, you have all the information, you take the proper steps, you don't cut corners, regardless of what the VA's view is of your situation, they can't stop their service connection if you have a solid ground to stand on. Need guidance to file a burial claim. I have smoldering by VA. Need guidance to file a burial claim. I have smoldering diagnosed by the VA 14th of 2021. Station lived and also lived there. And okay. So definitely I would reach out, go ahead and sign up on the foundation's website if you haven't already. That way we can further look into your case. Because I don't want to just off the top of my head say, we can get this or we can get that or we can get this done for you. But I do know we have the ability to look into your file. If you ever filed a disability claim or submitted anything to VA, we will be able to guide you and give you those proper steps so we can get you moving in the right direction. And that's the website, DKGVF My denial has a couple of errors. Like the dates of the incident for my back, they have 1996 instead of 1998. Basically disregarding my STR, buddy letter from in service, Marine, and lake statement. So if you identify those errors, that is a duty to assist error. Now, if you're outside that year window from when you received that denial, then you will just be filing a supplemental claim, which means you have to provide the VA with new and relevant evidence. Because that if that is something that happened and you're already outside that year, you should have already filed the 0966, which is the HLR, and that's for them to fix the errors or identify to properly use the evidence that you submitted. But if you're outside that 1 year window, the only way you're going to be able to move forward with this is to file a 995, which is a supplemental claim, but they're going to want you to submit new and relevant evidence to even acknowledge the service connection of this condition. I'm being seen by Kaiser doctor for migraines. I am service connected for tinnitus. I'm on 3 different meds for migraines. Kaiser has notes saying migraines are triggered by tinnitus. Do I still need Nexus? I would say no. But like I was saying earlier, it's never bad to have more than enough evidence, okay? So Kaiser notes saying migraines are triggered by tinnitus. I don't know if the VA would like that verbiage. I don't know if they would say that it's a causative reason for your migraines. So I probably personally would get a Nexus just so I can get some different verbiage added in there because I don't know exactly what the Kaiser notes say and how they worded it. But if it looks solid and they're saying basically the tinnitus causes migraines, then you can use that. But if you don't see that verbiage in there, I would get a Nexus. I got denied Crohn's disease, but the VA diagnosed it for 7 years. Did the surgery and they still denied it. Can I have it as a secondary claim to PTSD? Right now, I'm not going to sit here and say yes because right now I have a gentleman right now his claim is actually similar to yours. Right now, he they already denied him Crohn's disease, and we're actually waiting to see if the VA is going to, pop the cap and say yes. And I believe his is we're trying to do it to secondary to PTSD too. How do I properly submit my evidence from Genesis or TRICARE online with my BDD claim? So if you go to number one, if you go to the TRICARE portal, log in, you can export your medical records. Once you export them from Genesis and or TRICARE, you go to va.gov, file a claim, and obviously they're going to ask you a couple questions as far as, are you still on active duty, and are you trying to file a fully developed claim, BDD claim, supplemental claim, and you'll fall in the BDD claim category, obviously, and then you would upload your records thereafter you finish filling out the other questions. But export your medical records from Genesis and TRICARE. It should be like a blue healthcare button or something on the website. I have a higher level review for GERD that was submitted 2/6/23. Had to call in 4/28/23. Duty to assist error. ID. IMO order to correct error. Still playing the waiting game. What is the timeline for a higher review? You can always call in to the VA and see what the status is. We wouldn't particularly know unless you signed up with the organization and gave us representation of yourself before we can actually see what's going on with your VA file. Like, we'll never be able to give you a definitive date unless they assign you a date of your higher review, and we'll never be able to tell you exactly where your claim is sitting. We can let you know that, hey, there has been VA correspondence on this day, on this day, on this day. This is what it says. But as far as how long you will be waiting, unless you've already been signed a date, we wouldn't know that until they reach out to you. Can I still file PAC that claims? Everyone says deadline. So this August 9th, 2023 deadline that just passed, that was specifically for your entitlement to catch that August 2022 date. So if you didn't file an intent to file before August 9th, 2023, then all that's saying is they're not going to back pay you till August 2022 if you rate that service connection. Now, PAC DAC is still here. You can still file a claim under the PAC DAC. All the PAC DAC is the VA is saying that we recognize, because you're in these locations listed and you came to us with this diagnosis, we will grant you service connection under the presumptive cause. That's all the PAC DAC is saying. That is just an easier way for people who are out in Djibouti, Qatar, Iraq, Afghanistan, all those locations who have some form of respiratory problem, chronic rhinitis, allergic rhinitis, bronchitis, to come file a claim with the diagnosis by itself and the fact that they were in those locations. Now, that does not prove the severity of your condition. So the VA can say, yeah, we see this, we're going to give you 0%. They can give you the lowest compensable rating because that doesn't prove how severe your condition is. So don't pay any attention to the deadline, the PAC DAC deadline, because all that is trying to catch that entitlement date for August 2022, which has already passed. But the PAC DAC is still here, is still going forward. So yes, file a claim if you qualify for those PAC DAC conditions. I was denied tinnitus, worked on flight line, and flew in UH-60s over 3 years. I was denied, shaking my head. So sorry to hear that. Yeah, tinnitus is, again, it's a condition you can't test for. And let me back up too. So most of the time when people file for tinnitus, they end up filing for hearing loss. Okay, and if that's your case, then this may be the reason why. So most, and this is, and I'm a caveat on the DBQs. So if I send somebody to get a DBQ for hearing loss, And it comes back you don't have hearing loss. Anything that's 92% and high in word recognition score is not compensable. Okay, so even if you have hearing loss, and they say you have hearing loss, they say you have constant tinnitus, having those scores on your VA file is going to hurt your record in the future. Okay, because if you come today and file a VA claim and you present the scores of 92, 93, but yeah, they say you have bilateral hearing loss, they say you have tinnitus, the VA is not going to pay you for those scores. And then 9 times out of 10, they're not going to give you tinnitus because of your word recognition scores. Okay? And if you file that going forward, anything after that, they're going to say happened outside of service. Because as of today, they're saying that you have good hearing. Because we don't pay you at 92 or 93%. We pay you at 92 and below. So, and I'm not sure if that's your case as far as like if you file tinnitus by itself or if you have hearing loss. But tinnitus is one of those conditions you can't test with. But if you can do DBQs and stuff like that, they usually put those two conditions in the same report. And if you have hearing, if you don't have hearing loss, they're probably going to say you don't have tinnitus. But I would need to see your file to see exactly why they denied you tinnitus. That VA decision rating that you received in the mail, that should give you a breakdown exactly why they said you don't have tinnitus or why they denied it. And if you find out why they denied it, you can 9 times out of 10 rebuttal it or figure out a way to work around it. But you have to know why though. You have to answer the VA's denial, okay? Because if you don't answer the denial, they're just going to keep denying you with the same answer. After filing the BDD claim, I submit more evidence to it as long as it's before the 90-day mark. Correct. Your claim has to be submitted in the VA system on the 90th day before or by 11:59 p.m. Okay. All evidence that you want to put in that claim needs to be submitted on the 90th day by 11:59 p.m. I paid No Life $3,500. I was at 90%, and we did an increase, and I still stayed at 90. It made no sense. I got the max rating for that increase. Shake my head. So it's I know everybody's frustrated with the VA math. It's definitely not my favorite thing to talk about, but just know if you add up all your percentages right now, you take every condition you got, you add it up, obviously it's more than 100%. Your total percentage, if you were to do basic math, needs to equal 200% in order for you to be at 100% rating. So if you go through all your conditions and you figure out what your total percentage is, if you were to add everything up, and you could be shy 10%, 20%, 30%, that is how you determine where you actually sitting at as far as what percentage you need to get that increase to 100%. But I'm sorry that like that $3,500, that's a lot of money, and for you to get your percentage increase, but no moving with your 90. So you were probably at 85% when you were rated 90, because you know when you have that 5-point rule, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you were probably at 85, 86, 87, 89, 88 or 89% for them to give you 90. If you had been at 84 and below, they would have round down to 80. So you probably wasn't at that percentage. You probably wasn't at the total 90, I'll say. But what I would do, I would just add all your percentages up and then see how close you are to 200%. And then from there, we can. If you reach out to us, I could just answer some questions for you and see how would be the best angle for you to file a claim to get you to that, get you over that final hump. Can a VA examiner deny a claim for migraines utilizing medical literature to state migraines are genetic? They can try. Okay, just like you can try to present articles and anything like that, they have the ability to do that as well. be about whose argument's better. Now, they're only going to do it if you allow them to do it. And what I mean by that is if they're presenting all these articles and or medical literature, your medical literature or your argument needs to be stronger than theirs. Okay. And I typically like to use the government websites or National Institute of Health. Those are government websites. CDC, all those are government websites. Okay. So the VA likes to see that information, and they usually concur with whatever's on those websites. So if you can find medical literature or any type of evidence from the articles from those websites, then I mean, how can they really go against it? When did this mandatory final physical start? Didn't 97, didn't again 2013 transfer between branches. I can't say that I heard the term analogy as far as surrounding mandatory final physicals. I do know final physicals. It would make sense to me that you need a final physical before you get out. Just so you know what your current status is, the VA knows how they released you out and when you separated. I think again the final physicals are the most important thing, because that is your opportunity to list everything, to say everything that you've been dealing with in the service that you was holding in or that you never reported. And they have to sign off on that, okay? The doctors, whoever's doing your final physical has to sign off on it. And you could take those couple of pages and use that to file a claim. So final physical, whether it's mandatory or not, get one. Make sure you have one. And make sure you keep that document. If I completed an attempt to file online, how do I continue to file my claim? I did it to beat a deadline. So if you go back to va.gov, if you're going through the va.gov website, go to the website, log in, and then you go file a claim. That intent to file should be sitting there still, and you should be able to move forward with answering those questions and getting that. If past plan is listed in my entry and exit paperwork, should you claim that separate, or can you claim that along with plantar fasciitis? Pest planus and plantar fasciitis, there's two different conditions. You would definitely file it as aggravation though, because if it was on your entry exam, that means that it was not caused by service, but you can say it was aggravated by service. Because if you file a claim right now and say, I believe that pes planus is a direct result of my service, they're going to deny you. It doesn't make sense, but they're going to deny you. So I would definitely file it as an aggravation and file plantar fasciitis by itself. Hey, I need you to go over there. Okay? Please. Is it illegal if someone uses an app to control my desktop and file my claim for me? Are you talking about like remote login? I would say that if you authorize them to use your information, I mean, that's totally up to you. I wouldn't personally give someone access to my VA file just because it has all your personal information, but that because that's HIPAA's involved, obviously. If they're professional and they're doing it, for I don't see anything good coming from that. But I can't necessarily say it's illegal if you're authorizing them to use your stuff. Like you just having control of your desktop. I have everything I need to file minus a couple nexus. How do I find doctors that will write nexus letters? My civilian doctors don't know how. Like I said, right now we're trying to expand our network of different doctors, different states. We have instructions on how to get civilian doctors to fill out the DBQ forms properly, but We just have the Oklahoma list right now, and we have a few in Texas, but Oklahoma's our strongest list right now. So, hey, you should go over there to mommy. Come on, go. All right, I love you too, but daddy's doing live right now.
Dad can go home or work.
Yeah, daddy's at work.
Does he work over there in the house?
Does the VA recognize vertical lines? If so, can this be tied to IBS? Can't say that I've seen that before. Clay, could you verify that for me?
Make it.
Does arthritis in both knees count towards 20% in both knees, or just 1%? It all depends on how it's worded, how it's submitted. Because you can get 20/20 on both knees, you can get 20 total, and that includes the bilateral factor. But it all depends on how it was filed. Okay, so if you file arthritis bilateral, then they should separate it.
Is yours?
But if they don't, it's because of the way everything was worded when you actually did the write-up for the claim. What's going on, John?
What's up? I was just saying hi. I was testing to see how this software worked and just wanted to check in. I figured I'd give you last time I did one of these and I did it with Clay. It was like after about an hour of answering questions, I was like, man, where's my water? Where's my coffee? Like, how can I dry my throat out or wet my throat out a bit? So just checking in and saying hi and thanking you for doing this for the team, for everyone on here. My name's John. I'm CEO of the Dale K. Graham Veterans Foundation and have been working with Ty and other team members to really grow our platform here on YouTube so that we have the ability to educate veterans across the country, because us, like any accredited veteran service organization, we struggle to help every veteran that reaches out to us. We'll have thousands and thousands of VA claims that we'll write this year, and many thousands more that we wish we could write, but we just don't have enough team members. So thank you to the individual who said that they were willing to volunteer, because we're always looking for new volunteers. We always love to turn individuals, into accredited representatives and allow them, like Ty, to be able to help veterans in this claims program. And us, American Legion, VFW, the Wounded Warrior Project, right? All of these accredited veteran service organizations that work with veterans across the country, but we're always trying to help more veterans to a higher standard. And so thankful to Ty, thankful to Clay for helping us host this. And please reach out if you have any questions or concerns that we're not able to answer on the call today, because we'll stay for 90 minutes, 2 hours, however long Ty's able to stay on, but we still probably won't be able to answer everyone's questions. But what we can do is allow you the ability to onboard into our claims program. We're absolutely free. We're a veterans nonprofit, and we have team members who will answer all those questions for you at an appointment. And so whether you live in literally Guam, Alaska, Australia, we've helped veterans across the entire world using our digital platform and setting up veterans with telehealth appointments or phone appointments, and just answering their questions while also being able to look at their VA case file. And that's what, Ty does every day. And so he's one of our newest accredited representatives, going through the accreditation process now to get his PIV card to be able to go into veterans claims files. And that's one of the most important things that an accredited veteran service officer can do for you. So, for instance, there was the individual that asked about, is it okay if someone logs into my desktop and does it for me? There are a few unaccredited veterans organizations out there, for-profit claims companies that, Clay talks about these all the time, that theoretically can help you with your claims program. It's just technically illegal. It's like jaywalking. You know what I mean? Like, it's illegal. It's just not necessarily prosecuted. There is a bill in Congress that is aiming to change that. And we hope to actually post some content about that on our YouTube page soon. It's called the GUARD Act. And it would make for-profit claims companies illegal. And it goes back to another question that someone had about the paying for services. So the only people within the entire system that are legally allowed to charge you are accredited attorneys and accredited agents. Even accredited veteran service organizations like ours, veterans nonprofits, we're not allowed to charge you for anything, even for an appeal. By law, we are not allowed to, even if we wanted to, which we want. Accredited attorneys and agents also are not allowed to charge you for an initial claim. And it's written in federal law like this, but an initial claim is any, like, basically first time you're filing for a claim or first time you're filing for an increase on an existing claim. The moment you get denied, and whether you're going to do a higher level review or an appeal to the board or a supplemental claim, an accredited agent and attorney can partner with you via contract that's sent to the Department of Veterans Affairs and help you with that appeal. And if they win that appeal, then they can get a percentage of your back pay. And that's how they keep the lights on. That's how, CCK, Hill and Ponton, some of these really, nationally and accredited and really great organizations are able to help so many veterans, is, they get a back piece of that. So some other companies out there, they're able to basically help you with any claim. They're just going to charge you sometimes 50% of your increase, which is technically illegal. I'm not saying definitely don't use those organizations. I'm also would never tell you to use one of those organizations, because it is technically illegal, and there are veterans organizations that can help you do that same thing for free. Nationally, the challenge with a lot of veteran service organizations, as many of you have experienced, sometimes they're just challenging to get a hold of, challenging to get into, because they're free. And there are so many veterans that need help across the country. This year and last year have set record numbers for claims that have been submitted to the Department of Veterans Affairs. So, and if you take just the past 9 months, so from January to today, more claims have been submitted in that period than all of last year combined. And so last year was set records. This year is going to set records. And that's going to really impact a lot of you all who've asked questions to Ty today about your backlog. And so, this time last year, we might have been seeing claims that were being adjudicated within a matter of weeks, sometimes, if not months. We're going to have some veterans that, because of that backlog, because of the PACT Act and all these new service-connected disabilities that can be applied under the PACT Act, there's some claims that might be taking a year plus now. And that would have been unheard of last year that we might start seeing now. Especially for higher level reviews and supplemental claims. And we could start seeing a significant amount of those just because of the PACT Act and all the new veterans that are coming into the system. And the last thing I'll leave with, and then I'll give it back to Ty, and hopefully he's had a moment to break, maybe catch some water. All of your questions can normally be answered within those three things that Ty has continued to mention. And I'll just outline them again so that he can continue to get a breather. But whatever your disability is, right? Migraines, backache, PTSD, anxiety, depression, you always have to have three things. So every veteran in the history of the VA and for the rest of time that has ever been denied by the Department of Veterans Affairs has been denied because of one of these three things, right? And write them down, put them, tattoo them on your forearm if you have to. It is one, an in-service event. Any sort of in-service event. So someone mentioned migraines before, right? You don't have to have a diagnosis of migraines in service. You just have to have an in-service event that documents you were suffering a migraine. And that might not be the strongest evidence ever to show that you have continuous migraines, but even one indication of a migraine in service could be used as an in-service event. So could a TBI, right? Let's say you had a chronic head injury. There's veterans, because not only could you apply for TBI, but if you have migraines consistent today, you could show that you had head trauma in service, and that could be used as the argument for your medical provider, whether it's a CMP exam or an independent medical opinion, as your in-service event. So the in-service event could be a lot of things. It also could be, hey, I was in Vietnam, and that's my in-service event, right? And for presumptive conditions, that's your number one. Your number two is your diagnosis. And so back to the individual who had the questions about migraines, you don't necessarily have to have a diagnosis of migraines, because if you look at it, migraines are really a symptom of a lot of conditions. Mm-hmm. And so, you might have a chronic thyroid condition, and that causes you migraines. Well, if you got that chronic thyroid condition in service and you had migraines, you don't have to have a doctor say that you have a condition of migraines, because it's really a symptom. If they documented your symptoms of migraines, you can get service connected for migraines, no problem at all. And so, and that also applies on the backside. So if you have migraines today, then you just need to get those migraines documented within your medical history. And then you have to show that it's linked to some sort of event in your military service. Mm-hmm. And so it goes back to number one. So you have number two, you've been out for 10 years and you just got a doctor to document your chronic migraine condition. and you've got a doctor's slip that says that, now you have to go back to your service records and find some instance of headaches or migraines or a head injury, something that you could show happened in your service as your in-service event. So now you've got number 2, and now you've got number 1, and now you're looking for the third. So we talked about you have to have 3 things for every single claim in the entire system. And the third one is going to be the nexus. You have to have a medical provider somewhere in the system, whether it's your own private provider, an independent medical opinion provider, or a CMP examiner, to state that this is as likely as not. And if you don't have that third thing, you're 100% going to get denied. And that's what happens to so many veterans, that they get frustrated and they come to the foundation because they have the other 2, and they assumed that the CMP examiner that the contracted with the Department of Veterans Affairs would provide them was the third, which is the nexus. And often veterans who have the first 2 things and believe they should have the third get denied. And then they're forced sometimes to work with an independent medical opinion or independent provider or their own provider to try and get that positive nexus. So, back to the migraine condition, right? You had a migraine a couple of times in service, and you can show that in your service records. You have a diagnosis of a migraine, condition today, or, you have documented by a provider your chronic migraines. And then now you just have to have a provider, either that same provider, your independent provider, or your primary care provider, or the CMP examiner has to state that those 2 things are at least as likely as not connected to one another. And if that's not the case, then you're going to get denied 100%. And so whether it's an independent medical provider, a CMP examiner, or your own primary doctor that you go see every year, someone has to, on record as that third thing in these list of 3 things, has to say, in my medical opinion, with all my credentials and everything listed on this document, it's my opinion that these 2 other things are as likely as not connected. Ideally, they would say more likely than not, but as long as they say as likely as not, you have a strong argument for winning those claims. And so no veteran in the entire system that has all 3 of those things for any condition, any condition you could possibly imagine. And I hope we're able to answer more questions, but if we're not able to, just know that this applies to you. And so I'm talking directly to you. If whatever condition we haven't talked about today and it applies to you and you want to ask and we're not able to get to you, just know if you have those 3 things, you cannot win, or you cannot lose in the VA's claim system. And unfortunately, there are even times where veterans have all 3 of those things on file and they still get denied, and always appeal that, 100% appeal. Whether you use a veterans nonprofit or a accredited veterans attorney, appeal, because those 3 things mean that you're supposed to get service connected at the VA. And sometimes you have to fight for your benefits, and great veteran service organizations across the country work and fundraise so that veterans like yourselves can get the help for free to get the benefits they're entitled to, even if the Veterans Affairs the first time around said no. Just because the VA says no does not mean you're not entitled to something. And I hope that a lot of you in chat understand that. So I'll give it back to Ty, because I think I've already talked enough that my throat's getting sore. So I'll give it back to Ty. But
I appreciate you, John.
Yeah, you want me to stay on or hop off? Or I can answer a couple questions or whatever.
Yeah, go ahead, stand by.
Let's do it.
Arthritis in both knees count towards 20% in both knees, or just 1%. I piggybacked on it, but I don't know if you may have a different take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what I said is it depends on how it was filed and what verbiage is used when filing for those 2 individual conditions, because I've seen it where they group it together, and they give you 20% for the total arthritis, or they give you 20 for the right and 20 for the left.
Yeah, most veterans in the system will get two separate ratings. And it'll be sometimes listed as bilateral, but yeah, most veterans out there, and again, 38 CFR and the manual that the Department of Veterans Affairs adjudicators use to actually adjudicate claims is kind of very fickle, and there's a lot of different ways to service connect things, and it's unfortunate, but it sometimes varies for 2 veterans with the exact same symptoms in the exact same scenario, and you'll see them get 2 different ratings, and it's really strange.
Yeah.
Kind of back to the person that I think asked about bruxism, BRUX,
yeah,
I think it is. I don't even know, and I know I've seen that service connected before, so I know the answer is yes. But I don't know the code sheet for that individual disability, because again, there's tens of thousands of things that can be service connected at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And in fact, it could be a condition you've never, and the VA has never even heard of. But if you have those three things, right? And sometimes I joke because I know people remember it. I use the term alienism, right? Like, let's say slowly over time, you're turning into a little green man, right? And you have a disease that's turning you into an extraterrestrial. If you have those three things, theoretically, the VA can service connect you for that thing. Now, it's going to be hard to find a medical provider somewhere to diagnose you with alienism, but theoretically, if you did, what the Department of Veterans Affairs would do, like they do with many current existing, real conditions, is they will find the closest rating and they will align you with that rating.
Yep.
And that happens for a lot of different conditions. So, for instance, a lot of people get rated for GERD. But the section of 38 CFR and the M21-1 manual that gets used to help adjudicate that claim is actually for an umbilical hernia. And so that ends up happening a lot of times, and it really confuses veterans because they're like, I don't have this, but that's just the closest thing the VA can use within federal law to give you a rating. And so, Jonathan, I really hope we answered your question, but I tend to go on rants about other things, but yeah, you'll probably get 2 ratings. But if not, reach out to an accredited veteran service organization, and they can go in your claim file and they could figure out possibly why. And one of the things the VA will always do in your award letter or your denial letter, they'll tell you why and how they did things, and they'll give references. Yep. So they'll put the section of 38 CFR that they used to adjudicate your VA claim, and you can open it up yourself. Boom. And you can become kind of a localized expert on that one condition, even if only for an hour, and you could determine whether or not you think that they adjudicated that correctly. Or Ty could do that for you, right? Any accredited VSO could do that for you as well too. So
appreciate that. Can you recommend an eye doctor for my Nexus letter? We have our Oklahoma providers list. Again, we have no affiliation with them. We just identified that they speak the VA language that's needed for the Nexus statement. So if you come to our organization, you sign up with us and allow us to assist you through the process. We have an optometry individual, but that can provide you a Nexus letter.
Yeah. I think one of the most powerful things, Ramon, would be probably going to an audio or to an optometrist that you know of, right? If it's one that you've worked with in the past or one that lives down the street from you, you can go to the VA's website, get that DBQ, and then just go in there and say, hey, sir, ma'am, will you give me an evaluation and will you fill out this DBQ for me? If you go to any provider and you tell them, hey, I would like to set up an appointment with you with the intent of you filling out this evaluation for me and conducting an exam on me to help me with my VA claim, many of them will say no. Some of them will say yes. And the fact that many of them say no is the reason that there are so many for-profit DBQ companies on the internet. It's just because so many individual private providers will say no to veterans they've been seeing for years. And it's unfortunate. And a lot of veterans get that experience when they go to their own Department of Veterans Affairs provider. The VA provider will say no. And then you're forced to try and come up with a provider who will just fill out this form for you so that you can win your claim. And so I would recommend finding a local eye doctor and just going to them and saying, hey, will you do this evaluation for me? And at the end of this evaluation, will you give your medical opinion as to whether or not you believe that my current eye condition is connected to my time in service? And ask them to use the verbiage as likely, less likely, or more likely than not. Now, if they give you back the DBQ and they say less likely than not, you could kind of explain to them that that's going to get you denied, and they may double down and say, hey, that's my medical opinion, and then you just kind of have to go with it. And you're like, maybe I just submit a different claim. Maybe I submit a different claim, or maybe I just don't submit this DBQ. Because at the end of the day, you're paying for their medical opinion, and you just have to trust their medical opinion, and that's what the VA does every day. That's why they send millions of veterans out to CMP exams every year, is because they're not, like Ty said, they are not medical providers. And so they're sitting in the cubicle somewhere at the Department of Veterans Affairs. They send you to a CMP examiner. They 100% have to rely on what that CMP examiner says. So if that CMP examiner says more likely than not, great. If they say less, great. If they say as, great. And so you just kind of have to go with what they say. So that's a long way of saying, Ramon, go find a private doctor near you, take them to IDBQ because it's right off the VA's website, and ask them to fill it out for you, and let Ty or someone from our team know if that eye doctor is confused about the VA claims process. Because as he mentioned, we have a little guide to help private providers understand VA processes and the veterans claims process. and we could send that to you if you want.
Got a link right there.
Yep. Yeah, I always Google. I just Google public DBQs VA, and that first link is almost always on all search engines, takes you to the full list of DBQs. And if you can get a provider to fill that out, that's one of the most powerful things that you can do to support your VA claim. And again, if your private provider will fill it out for you, your VA claim will be absolutely free.
Yeah, and I mean that's actually more credible for you because that's the person that's been seeing you for however many years.
Yep.
You can get them to fill it out, stamp their name on it, their credentials, then that's just more in favor of your claim.
Yeah.
Oh, 341 Mortimer Marines, rah.
Yeah, so you'll have to answer this one. I don't know how to help Marines, I don't think.
341 Mortimer Marines submit a statement of claim with all the places and weapons used with the CMP. Didn't ask any questions, just did hearing test and denied tinnitus.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Ty. I feel like I'm seeing more over the past year. I'm seeing more of these denied tinnitus than I saw like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. So even for instance, my wife got out not too long ago, and she actually in service, she was an aircrew in the Air Force. She complained about tinnitus in service. And then she went to submit a claim for tinnitus and they denied her. And she did, just a fully developed claim right as she got out of the Air Force. And I'm seeing that more and more. And I think kind of like Ty said earlier, it's based off of your job duty and your MOS, and your MOS alone could be used as an in-service event just to show your exposure and your likelihood of being exposed to noise hazards. I would appeal. I would for sure appeal tinnitus. Now, hearing loss, like Ty said before, it can be very fickle and very challenging for veterans to get hearing loss. I mean, you about have to be darn deaf, in order to get. And I've met many older veterans, Korean War, World War II, Vietnam era veterans, and they're getting denied for hearing loss, and they're just so confused. And it is unfortunate the way the VA adjudicates hearing loss claims, but you really do have to have a pretty significant hearing disability to get a rating for it. And then, the nexus portion can be very challenging, but the tinnitus piece, you should definitely appeal.
Yes.
I would appeal that. Yeah, I would submit a supplemental on an 0995, and I would find an audiologist in your local community to fill out or to just do a nexus letter for you, have them do a Maryland CNC exam. And then at the end of that exam where they document your hearing loss, have them document your tinnitus in there, and then just put their credentials on it. And that'll go a long way for your appeal.
Yep. And so real quick, what I noticed about the hearing loss and tinnitus, even if you're filing for tinnitus by itself, they make you do a hearing test. And so if your hearing results come back okay, that's usually what kind of gives them the okay to like, okay, if he doesn't have hearing loss or she doesn't have hearing loss, then she probably doesn't have tinnitus. And so I've seen a lot of the veteran scores come back from their audio exam from CMPs, and it's the hearing loss is okay. So I'm like, then they more than likely just was like, okay, she can hear, he can hear. They probably don't have tinnitus.
Yeah. I'd appeal that, sir. I think it was Louis or Louise appeal.
If you file PAC that claim today and were diagnosed with wildfire disease prior to your effective date would be
if you had the date of the bill. Yeah. So and a lot of the PACT Act effective date stuff can be very confusing. So because it can also go the other way for veterans. So we've seen, and not specific to PACT Act, but there's an instance where you might not have a diagnosis until after the PACT Act. And so theoretically your effective date is applicable to the day that you're eligible for any benefit, and you're eligible the day from which federal law allows it, and from which you have a service-connected disability with a diagnosed and a nexus. And so, and I think that goes back to the topic of 100%. If you didn't get to submit an intent to file, or if you haven't submitted your claim, but you have one of those disabilities that's on the PACT Act list, and if you haven't seen it, please just Google VA PACT Act disabilities presumptions or something like that, It'll take the first hit is almost always the VA's website. And if it's not, navigate to va.gov and find the VA's website for it, because there's all these new conditions, many of which are cancers, connected to the PACT Act for post 9/11 veterans, and then for pre 9/11 veterans, hypertension, and then another condition that I'm drawing a blank on right now. I think it's a heart condition that I don't know how to pronounce. For Vietnam, Agent Orange, yeah. And so, but if you have any of those conditions, still file that claim, and don't worry about the deadline. Don't worry about September. Yes, it's incredible if you can get backdated to 2022, but don't let missing that deadline be the reason you don't start today. Because if you start today, you're also eligible to be backdated to today, even if your claim isn't decided on for another year from now. So every day that you or your friends or your family go without submitting their claim that they're eligible for at the Department of Veterans Affairs, they're missing out on money. And we work with veterans every single day that have missed out on hundreds of thousands of dollars just because they didn't submit earlier. Literally hundreds of thousands.
Years worth.
Yeah. If I submitted everything from buddy statements for my stressors for PTSD and just received a letter to fill out Form 210781 for a date within 2 months of the incident, but can only remember the year, that's fine. Yeah,
that's fine.
You fill out everything that you can on that 0781. Put as much detail and information as you can about the individual event. My recommendation there would be to try and narrow it down as much as you can. So we work with a lot of combat veterans that, of course, over the course of a 9-month deployment, you probably experience a slew of traumatic things, right? And you may have recalls or unwanted recall or nightmares or memory or just deteriorated mental health in a lot of capacities. But on that 0781, try and focus on a single event as much as you can. Because if you try and shotgun approach it and just put every single traumatic event you have on there, it's just a little bit harder for the adjudicator to address. Because at the end of the day, every adjudicator, they're trying to, as fast as they can, remember they're just a government employee in a cubicle somewhere. They're trying to get to those 3 things as fast as they can. They want to help you. Every adjudicator at the VA probably could make more money elsewhere. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them are working because they do like helping veterans. They just sometimes get bogged down by bureaucracy. They want to help you, and they want to get to those 3 things as fast as possible. So when they open your claim file and they say, hey, this veteran is applying, Felipe is applying for PTSD, they want to get to those 3 things as fast as possible. Because you know what? They got a boss over their shoulder, just like me and Ty, we got bosses telling us like, hey, you got to do 10 more claims today. Got to adjudicate 10 more claims today. And even though the VA doesn't have a quota, we've seen in the past where there kind of are quotas. You know what I mean? Like VA employees do have quotas. So if they can get to your yes as fast as possible, great. Now they can adjudicate your claim, shoot that out onto the next veteran. And so make it as easy for them as possible by really laying out your evidence as clean and simple as possible, and really help them say yes. And that's something that we try and do at the foundation in every claim that we submit, so that it's very clear, clean, and simple. And the adjudicator is like, oh, this is an easy claim. Shoot on to the next, Yep.
Easy day.
Thanks for all the advice that you and Clay give. Hey, thank you, Fit over 50. I like that, Fit over 50. I hope I'm fit as you when I'm over 50.
Hey, same.
Thanks for the info. Thank you, Jonathan. If I can ever figure out my claims process, starting from ground zero through near 20 TIS and across branches, I'd love to volunteer to assist. What is TIS?
I'm assuming transition.
Near 20 TIS and across branches. I'm going to Google that afterwards, Mr. TR or Mrs. TR. We'd love for you to volunteer as well, too. And it is simple as going to our website, hit volunteer. Oh, time and service. Yeah. You can go to our website and hit volunteer. There's like a drop down menu for it. And honestly, becoming an accredited veteran service officer is something that, we've got tons of them who are volunteers at the foundation, and they help so many veterans, and they help as many as they want or as few as they want. We have some accredited veteran service officers that help, a handful of veterans a year, and we have some that help a handful of veterans a day. And that capacity is really up to you, but being accredited and on the VA's website is a really, really powerful thing.
Yep.
And so Ruben, I was granted service connection for PACT Act chronic sinusitis or sinusitis, sinusitis, and I did not receive back pay to August 2022. I was granted 6/12/23. How do I get my back pay? And so I was just going to
it may depend on when your intent to file was filed too. Because I know a couple people that submitted prior to August 2022, before the packet even came out.
Yeah.
And I know some that submitted right after.
Yeah. And Ruben, I wouldn't know without seeing your award letter. But this goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, Ruben, is that the VA can only pay you back to when you were eligible for that benefit. And if you didn't get diagnosed and you had no documented symptoms prior to June of this year, they can't back pay you till last September because you only became eligible in June. Because in the VA's eyes, you didn't even have that condition diagnosed with documented symptoms until June. The back pay really goes into play for veterans that have been struggling with that condition for years or have any inclination of symptoms prior to September 2022. So what you can do to get your back pay is you can do a supplemental claim, or in fact, I would do an appeal on a higher level review. And I would find somewhere in your medical records that show you had any symptoms of a sinus condition prior to essentially June of this year. Then you can show that you were eligible prior to June because not only did you have an in-service event, which is now the PACT Act, you have a nexus, which is the PACT Act, and then you have the diagnosis with the symptoms, which would have been before June 2023. So that is your homework, is to find any instance prior to June 2023 where you had a diagnosis or symptoms of a sinus condition. If that is the case, you should submit a higher level review, absolutely. If that evidence is not in the VA's hands, then you'll have to submit a supplemental claim, but you can still win that on a supplemental claim.
Yeah, agreed.
And then on your cover letter for that, I would put that, this, was or was not, a matter of record for that. And so that's also something we could help with. If you wanted to go through our claims program, you could put that on the intake form, and we have a team that does appeals that could help you with that as well too. And they're very gifted with that.
Glad to hear it, Andy.
Andy.
Thank you, Angela. Glad you tuned in.
Absolutely, Queen. Yeah. Anything that's on your exit exam is an in-service event.
Yeah, pertinent.
That's probably the most exam you can get. And what's great about it being on your exit exam is that since you were still in the service, it's also your nexus. So theoretically, if you're complaining about something in service and you're diagnosed with something in service, that qualifies as both your in-service event and it goes very strongly for your nexus, because a medical provider doesn't have to think very hard to assume that if you're still in service, obviously your current diagnosis is connected to your service. And that's sometimes why they call it, the golden years, because that same argument can be, projected out for 365 days in that same category, right? So asthma is one that comes up a lot, and they'll say, hey, I got diagnosed with asthma, a month after I got out, right? The VA is going to assume that you had conditions and likely that same disability 30 days prior as well too. So absolutely anything that's on your exit exam, I would submit a claim for. And that's why, thanks to better documentation and better medical records now, compared to 20 years ago, you'll see veterans that are getting out now and they'll have 30 claims to submit, all valid and warranted and good claims. Whereas, without great exit exams, without great documentation, veterans from Vietnam and Korea War era veterans, peacetime era veterans, Gulf War era veterans, right? And they might have had 2 or 3 pages of medical records, and in there is not a lot. And then they didn't even have an exit exam. So absolutely put it on there. That's a long way of saying yes, Queen.
Another question I'm making to plan to get to 100%. I'm at 60. Round it up. TS connection, my secondary.
Oh, another, gotcha.
Mm-hmm. 94K 90. Round it down.
I mean, I don't see the question. I read it a couple times. I was trying to find your question, sir, but I think maybe Jamie or Jamie, probably Jamie. Ask that again and let me know if there's a question in there, because it seems kind of like a statement, a good statement. You know what I mean? They're definitely great.
You got solid ground.
Conditions. If anything we can take from this, apply for secondary conditions. Everyone listening, apply for secondary conditions, because anything that you currently have a rating for, if it ever leads to anything else, or the medications from it lead to anything else, apply for that thing. Absolutely apply for it. A very common one, a lot of men don't like to talk about ED. If you have erectile dysfunction, apply for it. There's a special monthly compensation that you can get every month, specifically because a medication that you're on causes, changes in sexual motivations.
Yeah.
What are your opinions of hiring an attorney for the VA disability claims and appeals? And this is an interesting question too, because I was recently talking to an accredited attorney in Nashville, Tennessee on this. And a lot of accredited attorneys, they won't help with your initial claim because they know they can't get paid for it. And it's understandable, because they would rather spend their time, one, doing things they can get paid on, but normally they have enough veterans reaching out to get help with an appeal that they just stay busy doing that. And so I definitely would recommend using an accredited entity to get help with your appeal, as opposed to a for-profit company. And again, there are 3 different types of entities. There are VSOs, which work for veterans nonprofits like ours, American Legion, VFW, Paralyzed Veterans of America, Wounded Warrior Project, lots of them out there. There's about 100. You could use an accredited agent or an accredited attorney. All of the accredited people in the entire country can be found on the VA's website. You just search VA accreditation search, and anyone that claims to be accredited, you can find them right there on the website. You can catch them in a lie. And so you could look me up on there, right? You could look the Dale K. Graham Veterans Foundation up on there. So would highly recommend using an accredited organization. But I will say a veterans nonprofit, your county VSO or your state veterans service organization can help you do that appeal for free. Mm-hmm. Their process might just take longer. They might not have as great marketing. They might not be able to network you with medical providers that can help you document your conditions, but they will do that for free. And they're likely to be very, very competent and have done hundreds, if not thousands in the past. And so LA, whatever state you live in, there's going to be a state veteran service organization. Just Google the name of your state and then Veterans Services or Veterans Affairs, and it'll be probably the state website that you'll go to. And I guarantee you that organization likely has an appeals office that can help you with that. Veteran service organizations around the country can help you with that for free as well too. But having said that, all of these accredited attorneys that you can find online, some of them are very big law firms, they will help you and they will do a very good job. And they may take 20% from you, but then again, you're going to get the other 80%. And then you're going to get the 100% of that for the rest of your life. So it's not like they're not going to help you. They're just going to take 20% of your back pay for whatever period you are waiting. And that might not be a bad thing, because they may do an incredible job for you. And they may network you with medical providers that live in your area that can help you document your condition as well too, much like we would. So that's a long way of saying yes and no. And I apologize. I'm just wondering if it was a good plan. I ran out of space to ask. Sorry. Yeah. No, I always say, so it is a good plan to apply for any disability you are struggling with that you think is service connected. And honestly, I hate that that's such a blanket answer, but if you have a disability that you think is connected to another condition, apply for it as secondary and do everything that you can to work with your private provider or a provider that you know of that will fill out evidence for you and have them document that on paper and have them state, hey, this is the diagnosis. This is my medical rationale, and this is my medical nexus. Here's my credentials, sign and date. If they do that for you, it takes you so far in the VA disability claims process. And so whether it's migraine secondary to PTSD, whether it's radiculopathy because of a back condition, whether it's, insomnia secondary to anything, right? So you get the point. Absolutely apply for them. And I mean, it seems like a good plan as any. Having said that, it's hard to know without going into your VA claim file, without being able to see your previous denial letters, because that's huge. Any veteran on the call today, listen up when I tell you this, right? Before you submit whatever claim you're about to hit submit on, open up all of your denial letters that you've ever gotten from the VA and read them, because one of the things the VA has to do by law, instructed by Congress, they have to tell you why they denied you. And they have to give you a plan for how they would, or how, if they were you, they would resubmit essentially, right? So they're going to tell you, you could have gotten this rating if you had this. You got denied, but you would have been approved if you had had this, right? And so that denial letter will basically give you a roadmap for what you need to show the VA in order to win that claim. They're not telling you to commit fraud. They're not telling you to go have someone lie on your behalf to get this evidence. They're saying, hey, we think that this probably could apply to you, right? Like, this is why you were denied, and you would have won if you had shown us this. This happens to a lot for veterans. So we had a lot of people in here talk about PTSD, right? Veterans will come to the foundation upset, hey, I got a 10% rating for PTSD, and I think I should have gotten 50%. On your denial letter, well, in this case, it's an award letter. On the letter you get from the VA that says you're 10% for PTSD, it'll say, to get the next higher evaluation for PTSD, you would have to show these symptoms. And so it's just a matter of saying, do I think I have those symptoms? If that's the case, then absolutely you should submit for an increase. And it's all about reading that denial letter.
Yeah, denial letter is the most important thing, because the biggest thing that I see with individuals that get denied is they resubmit the same thing over and over and over and over, the same evidence. And in those claims, when you're filing for a 995 supplemental claim, it's new and relevant evidence. And we know we see it in your record. The VA sees it in your record, but for some reason, they're still saying no. Yeah. But you still submit the same information. They don't want to see the same information. It's going to be like automatic denial every time. So that's why, like John was saying, you need to read that denial letter to know specifically why, so you can provide them with that answer.
Yeah. Great question. Chris, my bruxism, might be bruxism, I would say this differently, was combined and rated with my TMD, yeah. And so this happens a lot. Someone mentioned earlier pyramiding, and so this is nowhere true, and this applies in this scenario, right? Because the VA may determine that your symptoms are aligned under the same two different conditions, in which case they're not going to let you pyramid, as it's called. So the VA is not going to allow pyramiding. And this is very evident for veterans that struggle with multiple mental health conditions. So it may be objectively true that you have PTSD, depression, and anxiety, but the VA is only going to give you compensation for one of those, because it's very likely that those disabilities, those different mental health conditions, all come with very similar symptoms, and sometimes identical symptoms. And so, maybe it varies on day to day for you. And they actually even may rate 3 different disabilities, but they're only going to pay you for one. Yeah. And so a lot of adjudicators, especially in this scenario as well, they might just give you one rating and then combine both of those, disabilities into one rating, because they know even if they broke them apart, you're only ever going to get paid for one of them. And it's always going to be the higher. And so let's say you had PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and they assess your PTSD at 70%, you're going to get paid PTSD. And they're not going to pay you for depression or anxiety, even if they technically rate it service connected.
Yeah, they'll just throw it under there.
Yeah. And then if that's the case, sir, you could just show that they do have separate symptoms, and you could submit that as a supplemental claim and just show documentation that these are separate conditions that have very distinct and separate symptoms and possibly different symptomology, and then you could reappeal, or you could appeal or resubmit for that. TR again. What if in guard status on drill duty ends up in the emergency room, precautionary for stroke, but diagnosed as a vertigo, preceded by severe migraine and tinnitus, ringing like a fire alarm? So, Ty, I'm not for sure if you've seen this. I will say openly and honestly that I think it's a travesty what we do to guard and reserve members when it comes to the Department of Veterans Affairs. I can't tell you, how many veterans I've interacted with that have been told by the VA they're not a veteran just because they don't have qualifying service as identified by the VA because they're guard or reserve under a certain period of time or for a certain length. But so I'll put that out there. But so in this scenario, on drill duty, and you end up in the emergency room, you need to get your commander, your first sergeant, your leadership. You really need a line of duty report. At a minimum, you could show, hey, I have documentation that this was the drill weekend. I have documentation that I was at drill, and here's the documentation that I was in the hospital. You could put those three things together and show that, hey, I was on a period of active duty, for that drill weekend, and this is what happened. Nothing's going to be more powerful than getting a line of duty report. So whether or not one was done, or you can get documentation from your command now that that does document that happened, even if it's not an actual line of duty report, that will go really far. And so I would highly recommend trying to get all three of those things, or at a minimum, your commander, first sergeant, whatever, in terms of, what the rank structure is like for whichever organization you're in, get someone to document that from your leadership.
Yeah, that would be the same advice I can give. Like, it's really, really daunting, the process that we have to go around for our guard members if they're not on active orders, because the VA doesn't really recognize reserve time as time in service.
Yeah.
Like, if you're on a drill weekend, I wouldn't care. Like John said, if you can get a letter or a statement or a line of duty, a letter from your commander, first sergeant, any of those higher ups, that'll probably be a solid base for you.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it'll work, but that's your best avenue.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's again, it's kind of one of those scenarios. It's hard without us being able to look in your VA claim file and be able to look at all of your medical records and documentation. But yeah, that might be the best recommendation, depending on the exact circumstances of your command and when you left and everything.
What is favorable findings? Favorable findings. So I see this a lot in decision letters, rating decisions, whatever terminology you decide to use. But once you look at that rating decision package and you go through the breakdown of all your conditions, the VA can say they have favorable findings, but they can still deny you service connection. And all favorable findings is saying is they concur with the medical evidence that they received as far as the diagnosis you have, but they can still say, oh, we don't have a nexus link. We don't have a link connecting this diagnosis or this condition to service. And you, like John said earlier, we need those three things.
Yeah.
In-service event or injury, you need the nexus from a medical professional, and you need the current diagnosis, the chronicity part of it. But favorable findings just means that the VA recognizes that you do have that condition. You do have an issue.
We probably get questions about that every day inside the foundation. Our front desk deals with those questions a lot, because the veteran will come in with their denial letter and it says, I have favorable findings that I was diagnosed with a condition. Like, I don't understand why I was denied for this. And you just have to remember, the VA is trying to point you in the right direction. They really are. They're trying to point you to all three of those things. They're basically telling you, hey, you have a diagnosis. And they may even say, you have an in-service event. But they'll say in there specifically, you do not have a nexus. Or they'll say the medical provider opined, never say that word correctly, opined that it was less likely than not that those two things were service connected. And then your roadmap is clear. Now you just need a medical licensed provider somewhere in the system to say that they are connected, and you just reapply.
Mm-hmm. It's just that simple. Like, the VA is giving you the blueprint. It's just a matter of if you read it and you properly understand what they're trying to relay to you. They're not going to say, hey, do this, and we'll give you service connection. But they're going to say, if you would have had this, and this, we would have granted service connection. But you do have these two things, but you're missing this. So what you got to do, you got to get that thing that's missing.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I'll stay on for one more, then I'll give it back to you, Ty. And I got another call here in a few minutes, and then I'll let you determine how long you want to stay on. You and Clay can stay on as long as you want, but I know it's getting a little late in the day on a Friday. These people probably need to go, have their Margaritaville somewhere. So So Judo said, hello, I was medically retired for residual of TBI and have a secondary service-connected 0% rating for post-traumatic headaches.
Get you some evidence, prove the severity of your condition.
Yep. Yeah, I would look up you literally type in 38 CFR and then the medical condition you have, and look to see what the possible ratings are for those. And it'll kind of map out there. As you say, is there a way to know if I file for increase to headaches, if it will open the TBI? The VA could. The short answer is yes, they could. The VA can open any claim anytime they want. We talk about 100%, total and permanent. Yeah, theoretically, but the VA can still open your claim file, and if they could prove fraud, then they could take service connection away from anybody, right? So, the VA, though there are rules, over 50, 10-year rules. It goes back to showing evidence, and like Ty said before, continuing to show documentation. In this scenario, if you submit any claim, the VA can open any other claim, especially if they think the status of those is claimed. And if they're interconnected, such as mental health, and in this case, a head condition, the VA could open both. But I would also tell you that that type of thing is unlikely to show a significant improvement in symptoms, and so the VA, in order to lower the other rating, would have to show that you have documented improved symptoms. I would bet for that they probably don't have that. And in any case, if they did propose to reduce you could always appeal it with new evidence and maintain it. So I wouldn't let that deter you from trying to get an increase for a disability that has worsened just because you're scared the other one could get reduced. In all instances, if you have a disability that you believe is connected to your time and service, apply, and do everything that you can to truly document, the true severity of your symptoms as best as possible. And if the VA ever proposes to reduce you and you think it's unfair, then appeal it. And in some cases, the VA reduces veterans and it is warranted, right? And the VA and even our foundation doesn't refute it, because a lot of times it's like cancers, for instance, right? Like if your cancer is in complete remission and you have no, secondary symptoms because of it, the VA goes to reduce you from 100%, and that happens every day, and that's very normal. And most instances, it's like, congratulations, your cancer's gone. And so, but in some instances like that, if you get the proposed to reduce letter, contact your veteran service organization of choice and have them notify to the VA within 30 days that the symptom has not gotten better. Here's symptoms and diagnosis, or a new diagnosis or new doctor's reports that show current symptoms, whatever the case may be. Yeah. Did I hit on that one, Ty? I'm not for sure.
No. Yeah, you got it. You're solid with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a hop off team, but if there's ever anything you need, please reach out to our foundation anytime. If anyone is on the chat and needs help with a VA claim, you can 24/7, 365 on Christmas morning. It happens every year. Someone starts a VA claim on our website on Christmas morning, and you're absolutely welcome to do that. We probably won't get to it till a couple days later, but you can always go to our website, DaleKGrahamVeteransFoundation.org, hit start a new claim. But having said that, use any veteran service organization, right? All VSOs are trained in 38 CFR and will help you for free. All VSOs have a slightly different culture. They have a slightly different vibe. They have a slightly different process and way to access them. We rely heavily on digital processes, and we want to make it easy for you. We really prioritize evidence and winning VA claims. But all veteran service organizations can help you. Your state can help you. Your county veterans officers can help you. Agents and attorneys can help you. But if you're in the chat today and need help with a claim, go to our website, hit start a new claim, fill out that intake form, and our team will immediately pick up your claim file. We'll get you set up with an appointment. It may be a couple months away, but we will get you set up for an appointment. We'll maintain your effective date, and we'll submit your claim to the absolute highest standard that anyone in the industry can. And so thank you for your service. Thank you for being on the call today. I'll hand it over to back to Ty and Clay. And please reach out to us if you ever need us. We've got someone on the phone Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 as well too. So you can Google us, call us, start our intake form, and we'd love to help. So thank you for everything. Thank you, Ty. Appreciate
it, John. Thank you for tuning in, brother.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
All right. I'm gonna stay on here for a couple more minutes. See if we have any more questions. On my benefits, all my claims have the statement no longer needed. So you're more likely talking about the request that the VA sent out on your behalf. So if it says no longer needed, you're still just basically playing the waiting game. That's just saying that, hey, the VA sent the request for this, for medical evidence, for evaluation. That could be your CMP exam. And either they don't need it no more, they got what they needed, or it was an error on their behalf. So right now, if your claim is still pending and open and they haven't sent you any notification or reached out via phone or email, then you're just on standby waiting until that claim continues to move forward. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for all. Hey, stay motivated. Thank you for tuning in. How do I get my military medical records? Been out 15 years. If you've been out for 15 years, with 2023, so in 07, no, 08, you should be able to access your records on the TRICARE portal, if I'm not mistaken. If you were out around 08, you should still be able to access your medical records on the TRICARE portal. You can do DS logon, which is like the same information you use to log into va.gov, you could use to log into the TRICARE portal. But if you are not able to access it, or they don't have any records on file for you, you can go to archive.gov. That's like the headquarters for all military medical records, and you should be able to request them on there with the proper information once you fill out the form. I have a partial ankylosing lower back pain, and medical records. Recently had a complaint and x-ray done. If I file a claim, what percentage would this? Again, it all depends on the write-up. So you can submit the claim with this evidence that you have right now. You can get 10%, 20%. I believe 20% is more likely, but if it's a partial ankylosis, I would say it'll fall in between the 10 and 20%. Can't give you an actual percentage because I don't know exactly what your file looks like. What's the easiest way to drop the DAV and go with the DKGVF Veterans Foundation? Just like John said, if you go to the DKGVFVeteransFoundation.org and you hit start new claim, you fill out the forms, do the intake forms and everything, and you have to fill out this form. It's called a 2122, which is already built into the website. It's a 2122. It's just saying that, hey, I want the DKGVF Veterans Foundation to represent me. Once that file is submitted on our end, like you sign a document, one of the accredited reps signs it, we submit it to the VA, and about, I'll say 2, maybe 3 days, we should be able to see everything in your VA file, and you will no longer be under a DAV representation. But you have to go to our website and hit start new claim, and then go through the process, the proper channels. So how do I get sleep apnea connected? It all depends. Number one, you need to do a sleep study, Benjamin. So once you get that sleep study, let's hope that it's not anything related to weight, because that's the VA's first argument is, oh, they're obese or anything like that. So there has to be obstruction. But you would need to get a CPAP or get a sleep study from the VA. If you already have a VA disability, go ahead and go to the VA and request a sleep study. They'll send you home with a CPAP. They will say that they don't really like to grade you off of that because of the type of sleep apnea that you can be essential. But I definitely would go to the VA, request a sleep study. They'll send you home with a CPAP, and then they'll run the test from there. And then that could be your determining factor if you have sleep apnea or not. And once you determine if you have it, now we have to think of an angle 2 service connected. And that could be from a respiratory condition if you have allergic rhinitis, chronic sinusitis. It could be if you have mental, you're taking medication and it's causing weight gain. Those are different avenues we can take to connect to sleep apnea. But sleep apnea is like physical obstruction with that condition. If that makes sense. All right, motivators. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. My name is Ty. I am a member of the DKGVF Veterans Foundation. Again, if you want our representation from the organization, go to DKGVFVeteransFoundation.org. Start a new claim. You can sign up as a volunteer. You can sign up, just to get the assistance that you need to file your disability claim. The links are in the description below, and I just thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great day.